Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Cabinet meeting. We have a really packed agenda tonight, so I should go to straight away to apologies of absence. We've got apologies of absence from Councillor Sharon. No other apologies. Minutes. Now, I have notified the officers of a few typographical changes to the minutes. Nothing to worry the horses as such, just a few typos. But I do want to mention one thing in particular of substance. On page minute 38, which refers to the asset development programme, item 2 and under item, it's so I've got the right. Yes, minute 38, paragraph 2, reference is made to the Cove, and of course the use of the Cove was not being looked at as a doctor's surgery, which it might be implied by the minute, but in the process of achieving a doctor's surgery. And then the other item is that on the resolved elements under the reasons for recommendations, reference is made to the asset development programme, enabling us to maintain financial sustainability and achieve value for money. What's not expressly stated is that, of course, our assets are there also to be utilised for public good. So we're not having a sort of a stormy sale of assets in order to get money. So our assets are still in play. So with that slight commentary, is it your wish that I can sign the minutes as a true record, subject to any typographical changes? I don't know if they've been included in these minutes, but I'll sign these pro tem. Okay, and then re-sign them afterwards. All those in favour, please. I have none against. Thank you. That's carried. Okay, that's dealt with that small point. So we now move on to General Fund, item 5, General Fund revenue and capital budget monitoring quarter 2. Sorry. I did indeed. Thank you very much. Are there any declarations of interest I should know about? Thank you. No, none on the table. And now matters referred to from Scrutiny Committee. I do apologise. Welcome to the Chairman of Scrutiny Committee. The two items you're going to tell us about are, of course, later on the agenda as well, but don't let that hold you back. Over to you, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and no fear that that will hold me back, but I appreciate the comment. Shall I deal with the more straightforward one first, which is the feedback regarding local government reorganisation? We had the benefit of a very, a presentation on this as well as a discussion. I think we're all aware that there's been quite a few presentations, so we won't come into this fresh. I think there've been earlier opportunities for all members and in other arenas for us to comment on various aspects of the proposals. So, as always, I'm not going to go through all the comments. They're set out for Cabinet to note and act appropriately on. Just to pick up 2 or 3 items. One of the issues that was flagged up was that the issue of efficiencies and savings can in some degree be affected by the final configuration that's decided. And I think I actually pointed out that one of the largest assets that's actually currently owned by the authorities involved in this is County Hall at Glenfield, which will fall in the Leicestershire South part of the structure if the preferred option of North City South goes ahead. And that just throws up some issues about how those assets are potentially divided, or if they are divided, then what that might imply in terms of the accommodation and buildings required by the Leicestershire North one. So we did feel there was some more work needed to go into that, because there could be an imbalance in where the assets sit in that geographical configuration. So I'm just the sort of link to that is the issue of transition costs, and there was a feeling that whilst we should be looking to achieve savings through this reorganisation, ultimately it's more about making sure that the structures that emerge are best fit to serve the interests of the residents who elect us and for whom we provide the services. And therefore, again, there's a balance to be drawn between the search for savings and the need to establish new structures that actually are correct. Just a slightly tongue-in-cheek one, there was an issue raised about redundancies by one of the members of the committee. I did offer to the Chief Executive professional advice for a fee if it was necessary. But more seriously, it highlighted the importance of how we actually work with our staff, Melton staff, but also the staff in the wider configuration, to ensure that they're treated fairly and properly and supported through what will be a very difficult process for them. And that's not just about when it happens, but in the run up to it, because as has previously been touched upon, the importance of maintaining services and maintaining stability and encouraging our staff to see themselves with a future in the new structure when it does come about. And that requires a lot of work and a lot of commitment on our part to the people that we employ at all levels. Question was raised, and I'm only mentioning it to highlight it because it's of some public interest as to what the impact on council tax would be. Fortuitously, Melton, in terms of its current council tax, sits right on the cusp. So there'd be a negligible impact on council tax for Melton residents. The same may not apply to people in the other authorities, but that's something for those authorities to have a dialogue with their own residents about. Then finally, again, there was some concern. I mean, the perennial issue of green waste came into this discussion because it was understood that there are quite wide disparities in the current provisions and charging regimes in the different authorities. I'm sure that's not just related to green waste; it relates to a whole host of chargeable services, from parking to planning, etc. Because each authority is free to set its own charges, broadly free to set its own charges in that respect. So again, it was really highlighting the importance of ensuring equity moving forward. I know we're at that earlier stage now, but these details will start to be worked on in the coming months and year, and they should be in the forefront of our minds, ensuring that there is fairness in how that is finally determined. And then very finally, I mean, I think it's right for me to say that the general consensus in the committee was broadly in support of the North City South proposal, albeit it's recognised there's a lot of detail to be worked on. There was a view expressed that maybe other configurations should have been looked at. For instance, Melton, Rutland, and well, actually, it wasn't said Rutland. Melton, Oakham, and Harborough was mentioned as one possibility, and when that didn't fly, who can we add on? But I think it's right to reflect that there were some different views, but the broad consensus was in support. So I'll rest there, and if there are any questions members wish to ask.
Well, you'll be relieved to know that I've got no questions. Anybody else on that one? Okay, Mike. I can say that the comments you've made, I'll be picking up later when we discuss the whole item in conjunction with comments that have been made at full council and indeed other comments received from members of the public. So it'll get a fair hearing at any rate. Now you're going to talk about the other item?
Yes, which is the older person's housing review. obviously there's a summary of the comments made at the committee. I think there's a couple of things I should rightly highlight in a general sense about this item. I mean, firstly, I think it was very much recognised by scrutiny the importance of this as an issue, and the importance to our residents of getting this right. And broadly speaking, and I'm simplifying, and I probably feel Chris Flannery's eyes boring into the back of my head if I get this wrong, from behind me. But in a sense, there are two issues wrapped up in this. One is the broad strategy, and recognising that currently there is an under provision, and we need to be looking at where we're need to be in the coming years on older persons housing. But within that, it's what our commitment is to the facilities we already run, and what the future of those should be, and that forms part of the broader thing. But it is also inherently an issue in its own right, and dare I say, ultimately, the decision on the right thing to do there may be a political decision rather than simply a financial decision. I mean political with a small p. I'm not saying party political, but for us as politicians to make a judgment at some point further down. But we are at that stage, and it's recognised we aren't at that stage. And this is a starting point, and what's being asked of Cabinet tonight is for further work to be done. And I think that's right and proper. The second thing that I do want to highlight, and again, I think it's right as chair of the committee, I do highlight that one of the concerns we had at the meeting of scrutiny was the need, and we accept the ruling that was made regarding declarations of interest, but there was an exclusion of one of the committee members at that meeting because of their association with one of the facilities. Many members of the committee expressed disquiet at that because they felt there should have been a contribution with that, the knowledge that that person had to the discussion that took place. But flowing from that, I think what's come out is that this is an important issue to the whole of our community, and as much as possible should be debated and discussed in public. And of course, at that meeting, for quite proper reasons, we did have an exempt report, and the same applies with the Cabinet tonight, and it was because of the ability to identify individuals and tenants, etc., within that. But we need to actually develop a mechanism in which there is proper public and also through our structures scrutiny of what eventually emerges as the direction of travel. And one of the things, for instance, that I've discussed briefly with officers, and I think maybe what we want to do at scrutiny when we come back to this is to allow, by inviting a wide range of stakeholders in this to attend and potentially participate in that committee meeting, which will ensure that when we're deliberating these things, we're hearing directly from people who have expertise and knowledge of them. So I thought it was right that I flagged those up as issues, and I hope the Cabinet will agree that this is too important an issue for the public not to see it and have an opportunity to engage and comment over it. That said, there are some specifics, and of course the report you've got, and it's said in the report, it only refers to the non-exempt part of the meeting, and there was discussion, of course, probably more extensive discussion around the area of the proposal that was exempt for right and proper reasons. So I think I'm going to rest on the fact you've got the comments there. They identify a number of issues that people want, the committee wanted to highlight or had some concern about. I think the only one I've highlighted for particular reference is the issue of ensuring that in assessing our need for older persons in the borough, that there is a link. It's not just about the director of assistant director of housing and the directorate heads, Michelle Howard, but it is a link with the planning, the local plan and planning decisions that may or may not be taken in the future. So at an early stage, we should be actually establishing how those two parts of the organisation interact. because we can come up with great ideas for the needs for older persons housing. If that not linking into our planning processes and our planning aspirations, then it might be hollow words. So on that, I'll rest.
Thanks, Mike. On that last point, the point you make is very well made, because it's got an exact parallel with the relationship between planning and business development. We mustn't predetermine individual planning applications, but in looking at the strategic approach, it's right to bring in the cross-cutting nature of all of our departmental work, so we get holistic solutions for communities at large. On the issue of exclusion of individuals and members from discussions, as you know, you're pushing at a bit of an open door with me, and I think that the Constitutional Working Group should look at the degree to which those restrictions are a bit too restrictive, and that we should find a way of admitting a broader discussion in the spirit of free speech and exposure to the facts. Now, on the document itself, when we come to the item in the agenda, I will invite the monitoring officer to explain why this particular document needs to be in exempt mode. And I have had discussions today where we're looking at the possibility of issuing a redacted version, so there is an immediate and wider access to some of the data. But obviously, when it comes to personnel issues and other things, we need to tread carefully. And I think that, subject to what the Cabinet decides this evening, going forward, we would want to open out the discussion with the people that you've described. You know, everyone with a legitimate interest in the future of these estates, and with some expertise to offer, because you're right, we need to get this right. As portfolio holder and leader, I will insist that we do that. We can't leave any stone unturned, and I will be making the point later that the review has to be as wide as possible into every aspect of what the subject matter, and if necessary, drill down on some of the data that's been presented in the reports. I don't think we could just rubber stamp it, as it were. There are a variety of opinions, all legitimate, and the bigger question, I totally agree with you, is the simple fact we have got more older people in our community, and that group of people are increasingly needing the sort of facilities that we'll be discussing later. How we solve that problem, I don't know. And of course, I'm conscious that we are heading towards local government reform, where some of our partners who will be in the new regime with us may even now be doing it differently to the way we envisage. And I'll be posing a few questions of the officers on that matter later. So I'm grateful for the attention that scrutiny is given to this subject, because it's not something that can just be pushed through without a wider discussion. So thank you. I don't know if any members have got any other questions or comments to make on the scrutiny report. Okay. Well, thanks very much, Mike. You're staying for the continuing entertainment. Oh, excellent. Thank you. So I now, subject to what Councillor Carter might have to say, going to move on to the next item on the agenda item 5, which is indeed a quarterly 2 report. I invite Sarah to make any comments that you want to. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. The report before you sets out the position of the General Fund at the end of the first half of the financial year, with a forecast to the end of the financial year. An underspend on the general expenses of 113,000 is forecast, and the Council's flexible budget monitoring processes are enabling the team to move forecast overspends to be offset by savings elsewhere. So thanks to the officers for that active management that's occurring. The significant variances to note are the expected increase in homelessness costs, which continues, with a proportion of this relating to preventative work, which should help mitigate bed and breakfast accommodation moving forward. There is reduced income on car parking, lifeline and industrial estates over the budgeted period, but all the industrial units are now let from January 2026. There are some non-recurring pressures in legal where there has been high staff turnover, but all posts are now recruited to. It's good news on the income, with increased income in respect to the cattle market, the waste packaging grant, planning fees and investment income, all of which are set to continue into 26-27 at higher levels than anticipated, helping with the spending pressures next year. Special expenses for Melton Mowbray is indicating a forecast underspend of 17,000 due to increased cemetery income. With regard to the capital programme, the key project is the stockyard, and as this will need reprofiling into later years once the project plan for the scheme has been updated. As noted in the report, the funding allocated in the programme has been updated due to a delay in the receipt of an intended asset sale. And if this is not received when the budget is set in February, this will be formalised at the council meeting. It's pleasing to be able to report a forecast underspend at this point in the financial year, and also to see that a number of these underspends could be ongoing, which will help offset the challenges that are likely to be experienced next year. Thank you.
Thank you. I did write a couple of notes of my own, which you may have just covered. There's a cross-reference, in a sense, to item 10 on the agenda with the waste collection. Now, the sale of site A on the cattle market site, that was subject to planning permission, which has now been approved. So I don't know if we've had an update on the sale since then. But it's not important for this evening, but all I'm saying really is that at least we've gone down a step of the way, haven't we, with that?
Yeah, you're right, Leader. It has progressed with that approval of the planning permission. My understanding is there has been an extension to the receipt of the actual capital receipt to the end of March. So I will still need to, for prudence sake, factor in. I can change it at a later date, but at this point in time, we don't want to be allocating funding that we haven't got.
Any other questions, comments from any members? Okay, well, it's to note, I move that we note it. You're seconding it? Yes, seconded. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Good. Oh, so now we go on to item 6, which is the housing revenue Q2. This is also to note. Pass across to Sarah again for any comments that you may wish to add.
Thank you, Chair. The report sets out the position on the HRA at the end of the first half of the financial year, with a forecast to the end of the financial year. The revenue forecast is for an overspend of 862,000 for the year. This will result in a reduced contribution for the year to the Regeneration and Development Reserve. The key reasons are set out within the report, and whilst there are some overspends on insurances due to recent increase in fires, staffing costs due to staff turnover and IT costs, the largest area of overspend relates to repairs and maintenance. The main pressure is on the voids budget due to the higher than normal and budgeted voids, as well as the increase in average cost of each void. There are also the costs of responding to the change in regulations relating to damp and mould, where there is an expectation of higher demand and therefore costs. The overspend is offset by higher than anticipated investment income. The overspend will reduce the level of reserve balances going forward as set out in the report, and it can be seen that overspends at this level moving forward are not financially sustainable. I am pleased to see that on this agenda, the decision regarding the approval of new repairs contract for the housing service due to an early termination of the current contract, and this should help with reducing the repair costs moving forward. Regarding the capital spend, an underspend is forecast with some long-term schemes anticipated to be carried forward to the next financial year, and therefore I'm happy to recommend that this report be noted. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Glad you mentioned about the new maintenance contract, which is on agenda item 14 this evening, and that in itself will have an impact on the voids issue. And we haven't forgotten, of course, that we're doing rather better at collecting rents now. So that's good. So we're managing the HRA account very well, and you've moved that we note it. I will second that. Oh yes, please do. Sorry, Steve.
Thanks, Chair. I just got a quick question on page 39, paragraph 5.52 on D on the fire insurance. Right, have you got it? Yeah, I'd just like to see if we could review the policy in the future about tenants having an insurance. What's it called? What's it called again? What it's called now? It's gone out of my head. Pardon? Contents and insurance. I think council should be looking going forward and doing that on tenants, when especially if we sign up on new tenants. So just bring this cost down on fires. I think every council tenant should have insurance to save the cost on us on damages.
Over to Dawn.
The additional insurance costs of buildings, we don't insure for contents, that's the tenant's responsibility. So we have done some analysis of the fires, they're all for different reasons, there's no particular trend, but that has obviously increased our risk and therefore increased our premium on that element, but it's buildings only.
Thanks for that, Dawn. Thank you.
Okay, well, we'll move to the vote then. To note the report, those in favour, please show. Thank you, that's carried. So we're now on to item 7, fees and charges. Now, we've all, I'm slowing down. As individual portfolio holders for item 7, fees and charges, we've all looked at these in our own areas of responsibility, and I noticed that we will not be increasing car parking charges, so that's a real plus following our trial period of free parking, which was very successful really. So no increases there, and other increases are in line with inflation. So Sarah, do you want to say anything?
You've just covered some of it, but that's okay. So we're now commencing the budget setting process for 26-27, and that requires us to review all the various fees and charges. The review has been undertaken in line with the council's fees and charging policy, with the starting point being a minimum increase in line with inflation, which is currently 4%. This report covers the fees and charges that are set at the council's discretion and fall within the executive's remit as opposed to regulatory function. The proposed changes are set out in the appendices to the report, with some rationale set out in the covering report. Members will note a delegation to officers is requested with regard to gas utility costs at Bradgate Flats and bungalows in Asperby, which need to be further reviewed as a result of tenant feedback. It's important that where possible, fees and charges keep pace with inflation and the cost of service delivery through this annual review to avoid periodic above inflation increases. The outcome of this review will be built into the draft budget for next year. So I'm happy to recommend that we approve the decisions at 2.1, 2.2. Thank you.
I'm happy to second that and repeat that we're very pleased that we're dealing with the issues raised at Bradgate Court with respect to gas and related bills. Steve, did you want to say anything?
Quick question: is that coming off before it comes back to cabinet at a later date with this gas, or what?
That's a good question. I'm not certain whether the governance.
Because I'm not happy with it. Because if it's not, I'll say something on it, but I won't.
Right. So there's some aspects of it you want to comment on. Go on, Sarah.
The recommendation is that it's delegated authority. So, yeah, we're delegating authority on that one.
So, can I suggest, Steve, that as it's under delegation, we're only saying in principle, but we can look at the detail. We can involve you in that as partly portfolio holder for housing. I think that's legitimate. Okay. Yeah. So we can deal with that under delegation, as it's a matter of detail. Yes, Pat.
Just a quick one, page 75. I think it's a bit sorry. I think it's a bit unfair, the non-council tenants, how much they have to pay to rent a garage.
I couldn't quite hear that. Not. Oh, the garage rent.
Yeah. And council tenants are charged one price, £11.41. Non-council tenants are charged £12.39 plus VAT. I don't think it's fair.
Do we know if there's a rationale behind that difference?
I believe that was a previous policy decision. I would assume as well that there's probably higher costs of collecting those because it wouldn't be collected through the rent, and the VAT is that's what we have to charge by customs and excise.
Pat, go on.
I wasn't querying the VAT. I mean, that's the law, isn't it? It was just the difference.
Well, what we're applying tonight is inflationary increases. I think if we want to look at the policy, we could do that in the future. So the policy query, if you like, as opposed to the percentage increase, is why there should be a difference at all. But as Dawn said, it appears to be a prior policy, which certainly I wasn't aware of. So can we make a note of that? We'll look at that as a policy issue outside of this budgetary round. Steve, yes, please.
Yeah, on what page is it? On the what page? No page there. Yeah, page 75 report, and it's got here. It's got midday meals charge per person and meal charge per month. Now it's £81.97 going up to £88.41 on Gretton Court. Now to me, they pay enough. I think it should be frozen, not going up and still staying the same at £81.97 a week on the charge. To me, I think it should be frozen. Have you got it, Pip?
That
That one. 77. That's a page 77. I've been informed, Chair, that on the pod charges, some residents have been having these pods for about 6 months and not been charged yet. So can we look into why they're not paying this charge, please?
Okay, well, so that's an operational issue, isn't it? Really, not
Yeah.
not. So you're not commenting on the increase in charge.
No, the fees are fine with me.
Okay,
the fees are not being collected.
So I'm looking at Michelle. We'll pick that up as an operational issue. Right, okay. Going back to your midday meal charges, this is on page 75.
75.
Charges per person.
That's a week £81.
Yeah.
97 going up to £88. I think it should be frozen. I think the tenants down there. Also, Chair, I've been instructed. There's the assistant director, what's left the council now, I've thrown back. Stop the meal. Now I think this is disgusting, to be honest with you. If you have a meal, you have to pay for your meals all week. If the tenant's got an appointment down the doctor's at dinner time, they don't get a meal, they get a sandwich, and they're still being charged. To me, it says in the report somewhere that they're on about reheating meals. Why can't they still have a meal? They're paying £11 something for a meal and they're getting sandwiches. To me, that wants squashing and bringing back in where a tenant gets guaranteed a meal.
Okay, well, on that second point, that again, I think is policy and operational, not the charging as such. Okay, so I think we'll pick that up and we'll come back to it maybe next cabinet meeting. That's for fine. A report on it, because
as long as it's
on the charging itself, obviously there'd be an impact if we pick up your suggestion that we freeze it. Dawn, can you give us a clue as to what that impact would be?
Sorry, I haven't got the financial impact in terms of the quantum on that. I think the service is already subsidised. I think that's been covered by a number of reports previously. Some of the issues are picked up in the older person's housing review later on the agenda. So if that charge is not implemented, then there'll be income lost, and the other wider tenants will be subsidising the meal service to a greater degree at Gretton Court.
These charges that we're approving will be effective from next April, yes? So I take on board the point that anything we don't agree to tonight will impact on your budget considerations, but we're only talking about one item here. So I think I'm looking at colleagues, what we could do then is to modify our recommendation tonight to exclude that one item for consideration at the next cabinet meeting, which is only a few weeks' time. That would give us a chance to receive accurate information and arguments about that one item of the midday meal. I think that would serve, wouldn't it? That would give justice to everyone's point of view and an opportunity to tease out the pros and cons. Is that okay, Steve?
I'm happy with it, Chair.
Just could note that for the purpose of this motion, subject to what Dawn's going to say, in fact, I'll let you speak first, Dawn. Go on.
I was just going to suggest, is it worth delegating that as well, along with the utility charges in Asfordby? So we can deal with it outside of the meeting, save a separate report.
Well, the only thing is with that, Dawn, is that if members want to freeze it, I think we need to make a decision on it rather than delegate it. I think that would be a mistake. Go on, Ed, please.
No, I think the delegation still has the same force and effect as a cabinet decision taken in the meeting. It's simply a way to expedite the process. So it still allow the opportunity that you described for Councillor Carter and others to feed into considering what the right response for that particular item is. But it would just mean that the other decisions could proceed, which I think is what you're indicating you'd like to be able to do. There's already one item that's been delegated to be dealt with outside the meeting, which still needs to be subject to further discussion as well. This item in relation to the meals would simply be added to that discussion. So Cabinet could consider it and then resolve a position, and that would still be subject to a formal decision record in any case. So there'll still be a transparent record of the decision and the rationale for it, subject to those further conversations that you would have as a Cabinet.
Okay, so it's as broad as it long then, so we can still do the same thing. We can have further discussion and make a decision. I suppose it would fall on my shoulders, would it? Is that the delegation? But obviously, as usual, I wouldn't make a decision without conferring with colleagues. Okay.
Yeah, I think just to be clear, Chair, what I would suggest then, just checking with Clive, is that we simply would, if Cabinet choose to vote on this tonight, that the recommendation 2.2 would be amended to include reference to that particular charge that Councillor Carter has spoken to alongside the utility costs. And in voting for it, the same delegation would apply, which would be to Michelle, but in consultation with other officers and yourself as well, primarily in the way you mentioned.
Yeah.
I did.
All it was is agreeing with the point that Ed made, and that's simply that we need to just ensure we've got the right wording in there. So that was the point I was going to come to, is whether we just want to lift that exact wording out of page 75 and add that in. So and as long as we've got a record of that, then that will be what would go to the vote.
Okay, so we'll lift the actual wording in the report, which happens to be on page 75, but it's the midday meal charges per person. It's that item there. Over to you, Margaret.
Thank you. Yes, the Gretton Court charges, the weekly charges, I think it's quite interesting the fact that the heating charges have come down, which is a benefit to those residents. also the 3-bed warden's house weekly charge has come down from £27.36 to £7.73. And I know we've made some savings from last year with the negotiating contracts for heating and things. But I'm just interested to see why the midday meal charge has gone up by 8% on a rough calculation, and all the other charges, including the lunch clubs, has only gone on with a nominal fee of 4%. So I'm not quite sure why we've hit the daily meal charge, well, the meal charge at Gretton Court by such a huge increase of 8%.
Sorry, I don't have the background to that. What's put forward is coordinated by finance, but it's dealt with in consultation with the budget holders. So I'm sorry, I haven't got the background. We could pick that up under the delegation and the consultation, but it sounds like the Director for Housing has got an answer.
Thank you. So the reason that some of those other charges have reduced because we recharge based on actuals for the previous year, so that's positive, and we pass that credit back to the tenants. In terms of the meals, we have really high costs in terms of food, purchase of food, serving of food, the staffing arrangements around that as well. So the additional costs go with the provision of staff to cook and then serve those meals. What we can make sure we do in the decision notice that follows through the delegation is set that out really, really clearly, so you can see that broken down in full. And what we can also do within that decision notice is show the financial impact on the HRA of any decisions to subsidise the meal charge. Just as a reminder, members took the decision again through a delegation to subsidise or to cap the meal charge last year. I would just point members to the risk of I guess the cumulative impact of not having increased those charges at a point when those inflationary pressures are genuinely there. Very happy to give any full detail and transparency to that, of course, and know it's an ongoing area of concern for members. But the reasons are that they are reflective of the costs to this council to deliver that service in that particular way. And that's one of our ongoing challenges and part of the things that we're trying to pick up as part of the wider review. Thank you.
I think we've covered all the points now. So with the proposal as amended, can I ask for a vote, please? It's been proposed and seconded. Those in favour? Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. So we're now on to item 8, which is the mid-year Treasury Management Report. Over to the dynamic duo again over there. Go on, Sarah.
This is always a good one, isn't it? At the moment, while interest rates are okay. I'm pleased to propose this mid-year report covering the Treasury management activities for the first half of 25-26 financial year. The Bank of England has cut the base rate twice since the start of the financial year to 4%, with another cut anticipated by the end of the financial year. The average rate of return that the council is achieving is 4.36% for the year to date, which is above the benchmarking group. Their average is 4.15%, and returns are above budget. The valuation of the property fund has stabilised since last quarter's report. The report has also been updated to include the impact of the IFRS 16 relating to leases since the strategy was approved in February. However, there are no financial implications arising from the adjustment. So I'm happy to recommend that Cabinet note 2.1 and 2.2. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm happy to second that. Any comments or questions? Okay, I think we can go to a vote then. Those in favour, please show. Thank you, that's carried. So we now move on to the item we've all been waiting for with great expectation, is local government reorganisation. So we've been circulated with a revised recommendation. Have you all got it in front of you? Yeah, okay. So Ed, would you like to just explain the revision to us?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. So the document that you've got in front of you is the draft submission. So it's the same document that went to scrutiny into council, and that's because it's a live document that's still being worked on at the moment. So what you are approving is submission of the final document, which will be a changed version from the one you have. Appendix D which came out and was published on Friday, summarises the changes that have been enacted as a consequence of the discussion at our scrutiny, but also discussions at the 7 other scrutiny and council meetings that have taken place over the last few weeks. So it provides a summary of the changes that are currently being worked on to the final submission. But what the updated recommendations also provide is confirmation that it is, of course, possible that some of those meetings are still proceeding. There may be further feedback or amendments that are required as a consequence of ongoing review. And we just wanted to make sure that the recommendations were absolutely clear on the basis for any changes prior to submission, so that if the leader and I exercise our delegation within those recommendations, it's really clear to the Cabinet what you're approving and there's full transparency. So it is highly unlikely, and we don't expect there to be any change in substance. It's merely about the detailed presentation, clarification now at this late stage. But we just wanted to make sure the recommendations were more explicit than the ones that are in the report, which is why we suggested they should be updated. So hopefully, Leader, that gives an explanation as to why we've offered this additional recommendation today. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So there's no changes in substance to the previous draft recommendation. I just want to comment at this juncture on Chairman Scrutiny's comments. Staff, yes, that's a key issue for all of the 8 councils that are making the submission. We've discussed it several times, and we've got to go through proper procedures, but that's why we've been keen to be very transparent with the staff across the 8 councils, keeping them informed as to what's going on and what the time frame for these changes really is. So that's very important. You made a comment about savings not being overstated in and sort of denying the possibility of having better structures and better methods. You know, the one mustn't outweigh the other. And in a sense, the discussion we just had about charges is one of those, isn't it, really? I think that is correct. And that's certainly in contrast with alternative propositions like the donut, shall we say, where assertions are made about, well, we just do this and you can cut everything out, you know, get rid of all these civil servants and bureaucrats and it'll be much cheaper. Well, it won't be cheaper because the job's still got to be done and there'll still be a management team needing to operate it. So I think that's very much in the frame. The comment you made about assets referred mainly to what is now the County Council building. That's a very good question, and I don't have an answer. But I do note that the Police and Crime Commissioner has an office there, and as they're going, that will be a saving of about 5 million that can go into frontline, and we'll all cheer at that, I feel certain. And there is the other question of where the new mayoral authority will be located. Will it be here, for example, or could it be there? But I think that is very. Do you want to comment on that aspect, Ed? Have you got any inkling of discussions on that?
I think in terms of asset reviews and choices that future councils will make about locations, that is very much a matter that I think will form part of the next stage of this process, which is in relation to transition and implementation. So once the bids are submitted, we will start in earnest in the new year in building implementation teams and a PMO, project management office, to oversee this process. Whatever choice government ultimately makes, there will be a substantial role for this organisation in supporting and working with other councils to bring to life whatever structures may emerge, and choices about locations of those new councils and retention of buildings within different localities will absolutely be a matter that we consider at that time.
Okay, I now want to address some of the comments that were made at full council because I undertook to do that, and I'm going to read it out if you don't mind. So at the start of the year, I did promise that we would keep members informed, and notwithstanding the constitutional position, which is that we will make a decision on this, not full council, I wouldn't believe it right to proceed with any particular policy without a majority of support from among council members. And I believe that we've done the first thing. We've kept people informed, including through an all members briefing, and it would have been good to see some other members attend the briefing. And I think we've also achieved and demonstrated that we have consulted with the public and informally. So there has been quite a lot of engagement. Now, since March, when the group of 7 borough and district councils, together with Rutland County Council, submitted the interim proposals to government, we have engaged in a programme of wide consultation and testing of a public opinion, including with business. And I was very pleased that this week the business community have endorsed emphatically the proposals which we've all agreed on for the mayoral authority, which is Leicestershire, Leicester and Rutland. And of course, underneath that body will sit the unitary councils, however many they are, whether they are 3 or 2. And that will be decided by government. So tonight, Cabinet makes a decision to take the next step further forward. And then the group of 8 leaders from across the district borough councils and Rutland will meet again to confirm or otherwise our commitment to North City South. And of course, in theory, any one council through the cabinets could withdraw from it. In theory, I'm not anticipating that, and I certainly hope we won't. So that is the if you like, the democratic process. So let me just respond specifically to some of the points that were made at the council meeting. And I want to thank Councillor Marilyn Gordon for her very clear support. It's always good to get the support of a former mayor. And I hope that her comments will be recorded in the minutes for next time. I want to thank also Councillor Atherton for his support and his lively contribution. All his comments about improvements to the presentation of the working draft attached to the report to Council have been duly noted, and I may say that very similar comments have been made by other members of other councils across Leicestershire. So he wasn't shouting out on his own. But I also want to emphasise that the so-called missing appendices were not really missing. They were omitted deliberately because it's a working draft. It wasn't a final sort of submission to be assessed, and it contains a lot of detailed working. I want to thank Councillor Ronan Brown for his heartfelt comments, albeit in support of the County Council's donut proposal. And I'm sure that his anecdotal praise of the county's services are correct. And I wouldn't want to disparage what the staff of the county do week in, week out. Indeed, about a year ago, we were pleased to praise the staff of its children's care services on being judged to be doing rather well. Recently, the adult care services have been judged by CQC to be in need of improvement. So it's some of some and some of the other. But with regards to the competing proposals for local government reform, I do not believe that either judgment should sway our decision one way or another. We don't say because the adult social care is not doing well, therefore the donut's wrong, or because children's social care is doing well, the donut solution is good. It's just a fact, and it could happen to any council under any structure. And I simply observe, with respect to adult and children's care and other services, that these services and others have been successfully restructured in other parts of the United Kingdom through LGR. Other large areas have been split and divided, so it's not difficult to do as such. Also, I observe that there's great cooperation at a professional level across municipal boundaries. Just because you're in a different council doesn't mean to say that as a professional you can't talk to the people next door. Otherwise, there would be no interaction between different police areas, would there? I mean, you know, county lines just wouldn't we just couldn't cope with it. So we've got to be realistic. And none of this precludes councils working together, and it doesn't really prevent restructuring. It's not an obstacle to it as such. I also want to thank Councillor Joe Orson for his rehearsing really of the well-honed argument from the county council of successive administrations. His argument really is that big is best. However, he seemed in his argument to be saying that the county-wide plus Rutland model was somehow smaller than either the North or the South model, and that the county model offers more sensitivity to local concerns. And I don't really understand that argument at all. I don't know why our model would be less sensitive to local concerns than a larger body such as the one he's advocating. Therefore, the takeover, as and I use that word advisedly because it was used by Councillor Harris at County Council of the boroughs and districts, can be supported. I just beg to differ with Councillor Orson on this. And to be frank, I think he's in a minority of where that, with respect to that opinion on this council. So finally, this brings me to Councillor Chris Evans' counter arguments. I sincerely thank him for his impassioned contribution, and it made two arguments really. First, that both proposals, the county's donut and our layer cake proposal for North City South, should be rejected in favour of what I can only describe as the 7 cupcakes, because he wants to retain the 7 boroughs, and by inference I suppose there's 2 Eccles cakes, one for the city and one for Rutland. Further fragmentation. Now, given the fact that the government are saying to us we've got to go for unitary councils, that would mean that we've got 9 unitary councils all running social services, and that really would be silly. You're just taking it to an extreme. So I repeat my comments at council that back in 2025, when we submitted our March interim proposals, the 8 councils did say that we weren't really much in favour of disposing of the borough councils, but this is Parliament's decision now. They've made that decision, and that's what we're going to have. We're going to have strong regional mayoral authorities with a lot of money and power cascading down from central government, and beneath it will be the unitary councils. The joined up services cannot be achieved without some form of unitary council. If we want to see adult social care and, for example, Gretton Court working together to provide a good service, we need a unitary council instead of being 2 different agencies operating separately. I think this is as night follows day, really. So the devolved mayoral authority will be important for us. However, I think Councillor Evans is right in one area of his comments, and I would say this: there is a need for the new unitary council to retain a front-facing public office in the existing boroughs. And I was pleased only this week to be able to compliment to one of the directors the action of one of our front of house officers. I stood waiting to get my car parking ticket, when we were a bit crowded, and she was dealing with a lady who had a really serious problem. She dealt with it with great sensitivity and professionalism, and was able to refer her to the right officers upstairs. And I think that's a really good thing to report, because it shows that our staff are being better trained now. Things are improving, and we must retain this front of house service to the general public. They can't traipse off to Leicester, whether it's for the donut, and they shouldn't have to traipse off to Leicester under the North City South provision. So this is absolutely vital, and this is work for the future. Now, the government has set out some proposals for what they call neighbourhood or community involvement, and there will of course be the continuing role of parish councils. This is all work for the future, and it will be up to us in the transition phase and the new councillors in the new model to make certain this comes alive, because that will be the way I think people will judge us. Chris did also argue about the democratic deficit. Well, I think I'll reserve that for another occasion, because that's more about how Parliament works and how Parliament decides local people can make local decisions. There has been a substantial weight of opinion in Parliament for over a decade now that we should move towards broadening out the regional mayoral authorities so that we can get more money and power from central government down to where we actually live, and that the best thing to fit underneath it are unitary councils. So I will leave it there and ask members to make any comments or ask questions of Ed regarding the process that we move to next. I've convinced you, obviously. Okay, so we're considering the comments, and we're delegating authority as amended in the revised proposal. I will move that. Can I have a seconder? Thank you very much, Margaret and Pat. We're all seconding it. So all those in favour? None against. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ed, for all the work you and your team have been doing on this. It's a huge amount of work, and I have to say it is a bit of a distraction from routine work, isn't it? We could do with a bit less of that. So we now move to item 10, which is the household waste recycling collection policy. And I'd like to say I'm really pleased with the quality of the report we've received on this, and I hope that you can convey my thanks to Ryan for it, because I think since he's joined, or is it rejoined, the organisation, he's really got into gear, and he's trying to get things running as we've been asking to do over the past few months. So I'm really pleased with that. So that's Margaret. You're going to say a few words on rubbish, are you?
Thank you for that introduction. Yes, yes, I'd just like to sort of say thank you very much to Ryan for the report. It's extremely good. It sets everything out, and I'm sure every member has sort of looked at it and understood items within it. I'd just like to say that the main objectives of the revised policy before Cabinet today are introduction of a weekly food waste collection service to meet the government requirements. We already approved this at our Cabinet meeting in January. The other one is reducing the residual waste capacity, that's the black bins, from 240 litres to 180 litre bins to encourage residents to increase their recycling. The recycled bins will remain at 240 litres. The reduction of black bin size is a preferred alternative to reduction of bin collection. And we didn't really want to go down the route of having 3 weekly collections, as some authorities have done, so we're not going to do that. Clinical waste will now be available by appointment only. Booking a convenience slots for users to book a slot for collection of sharps boxes. This will work better than previously. The sharps were collected on a scheduled basis, and that was not always effective. Now residents have the more convenient option of booking a slot for collection. We will not be providing refuse sacks for our communal properties where large communal bins are in place. We will continue to provide sacks for other sack users as described in 5.38 of the report. That's flats above shops will remain able to use sacks for waste and recycle collections. This will give a small saving on our annual costs for the service. The revised policy includes a clear incremental enforcement framework for persistent non-compliance bins left on pavements. You may have noticed areas where bins are left on the pavement, some permanently. To achieve this, the Waste and Environment Maintenance team will collaborate with the Council Safer Communities team. We've also revised the bin replacement charge by introduction of a warranty-based approach of 12 months. And bulky waste refunds have also been revised. We intend to offer refunds if the initial charge exceeds £42 and only if the request is submitted within 14 calendar days of the original booking. or by no later than 3 p.m. on the working day prior to the scheduled collection, whichever date is the earlier. Consultation has taken place and all of the options considered, plus a scrutiny workshop, the numerous comments you will see at 7.1 to 7.12 of the report. So we have considered all options to maintain a good service for our residents while having to operate within government guidelines. And more specifically, we will not be reducing our black bin collection. I'm very happy to propose a recommendation at 2.1 to 2.3 of the report. Thank you.
Happy to second that. Any comments from anybody or questions? Okay, I think if there's no questions or comments, we can move to a vote. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. None against. That's carried. We now move on to item 11, private rented sector housing review. And I seem to remember this flows from a new statutory obligation which we've been preparing for some time, and indeed was the subject of a question 18 months ago from Councillor Ronan Brown. It's been a significant amount of work on top of everything else, and we're asked to endorse the programme of action tonight, and I invite Michelle to make any comments you wish. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. So yeah, as the report says, it's a review, an update on the review of the private rented sector work that we already undertake. The council did also already have duties and responsibilities in relation to standards in the private sector, but there has been a huge amount of work at a national level to really focus on what the future of those responsibilities might be, which means that they are changing. Just in terms of some context, we have around 3,900 private renter properties in the borough and around 16 licensed HMOs. One of our challenges is that our approach is largely reactive in terms of our landlord engagement, and we have got some needs to improve and strengthen our policies and procedures, certainly in line with the change in legislation. The Renters' Rights Act, in case members are not aware, received royal assent in October, and that brings with it a number of changes, including the end of no-fault evictions. And if you recall, leaving private rented accommodation is one of the main reasons that people present as homelessness, so that is welcome. The application of the Decent Home Standard to the private renter sector, and it provides stronger enforcement powers for local authorities. And at this point, I would just point out that that is really welcome news, but it does create some resourcing risk, which I know we've been talking about outside of this meeting. The council has received notification of some new burdens funding allocation, but that is based on £4 per property, which would result in just under £16,000 for us. So as you can imagine, that's something we need to continue to work through in terms of how we balance those requirements with the resourcing available. As you'll see from the report, an action plan has been developed. This is overseen by Chris, as our AD for Housing, working with a cross-directorate group because our work does span a number of our teams. Separately, our officers will be working with portfolio holders to finalise 2 key policies to support our work in this area. And we ask that members note the outcome of the review this evening, endorse our action plan, and note that we have developed some guidance for landlords in the area. So a work in progress, very happy to provide further update in a period of time. We will be making steps now to actually recruit to the role of private rented sector officer, but that need for cross-directorate working will continue as we start to understand what the new requirements really mean for us in practice. Thank you.
Well, invite any members to ask questions or comments on this paper. Michelle, okay. In that case, we'll move to a vote. Those in favour of the recommendations at 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3, please show. None against. Thank you. So we now move on to item 12, which is the Tenant and Leaseholder Engagement Annual Report. To some extent, this is the tip of an iceberg, and it's a very nice iceberg because it's involved our tenants so much. And it's I'm really pleased the way it's gone over the past year. It's the question of standards bleeds into the other paper we've had or we have tonight about awarding contracts. So it's not just what's on this particular paper. The tenants have been involved in shaping that, and that's been really helpful, and through the local Landlord Assurance Board. So I'm really pleased with that. I keep saying I'm really pleased, but I am, because the participation by tenants have helped shape these policies actively, and I want to place on record my thanks to all the staff involved working with the tenants, whoever they are and whatever their names are. I won't name them now, but they're looking superly embarrassed already. Okay, but it's been a really good news story. Michelle, do you want to say anything else about this? Oh yes, please do, Steve.
Yeah, Chair, thanks a lot. I'd like to thank Chris for all the hard work on this report, and I think he's done a good job in enticing the tenants and that, engaging with the tenants. I'd like to thank Chris. Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you.
And all those who are sitting behind him. Okay, anybody got any comments or questions? Further comments? Okay, well, we've got 2 notes, an approve, and a note. So I'll move them on block. Do we note those and approve those? Have a seconder, please. Margaret seconding. Those in favour, please show. Thank you very much indeed. That's excellent. Now, before we go on to the next item on the agenda, I'm just going to adjourn for 5 minutes, okay? Because I need an actual break. So I'm just adjourning for 5 minutes. Thank you very much. Okay, well, thank you very much, colleagues, and for the benefit of anyone watching online, we've just had a 5-minute comfort break. Okay, so we're now on to item 13, which is the older persons housing review, and I did want to just to ask the monitoring officer why any part of this needs to be taken in exempt mode, because that would be not in public. So can you just unpack that for us, Clive, please?
Thank you, Leader. I mean, as our members, I'm sure, are aware, the decision on excluding the public sits with this cabinet, as it sits with council or any committee when it considers the material before it. That test has to consider the public interest of remaining in public session and the interest of going into private session, having regard to the nature of any exempt information which is contained. I'll come back to that point in a moment. My role as the property officer is to mark papers which contain exempt information to indicate that they contain it, and where there is a likelihood of that being considered in private, to mark the papers to that effect, to make sure that they are not then published, because obviously if you publish them and then cabinet, committee, council, whoever the body is, says let's go into private, it's a bit late because you've put that material in the public domain beforehand. So that's where my role ends, in as much as the release of information is concerned. My role obviously may continue depending on advice that's required at the next stage, which is the public interest test, which I referred to a moment ago. I think members obviously should be aware that the existence of exempt information is not an automatic switch, which means the public are excluded in any event. It is that public interest test which is important, and that will always be fact specific. So it's a matter of saying what is the nature of the the information that's exempt. Now, in this case, this is about personal information or information that will identify, or is likely to identify individuals. So that's looking at people who are residents, people who are staff who may be affected in the services concerned. And then you consider what's the nature of that information relating to those individuals. What is the harm that would be caused if we publish that information, having regard to those individuals, their current position, and any proposals that are made in relation to those individuals for the future. Now, in relation to this matter, we have had a preliminary consultation process when Lynn Housing did their report, and depending obviously where Cabinet choose to go next, there will be further consultation on a more detailed basis on particular proposals. The potential harm, and its potential, and obviously ultimately it's for Cabinet to weigh it up, is that if we are putting information out in the public suggesting a course of action may or may not take place in relation to individuals before we've had time to carry out proper consultation with them, which has to comply with case law principles known as gunning principles. If we start to put that information out, discuss it in a manner which indicates the potential course of action that we've not engaged properly with those tenants on, then there is that risk, of course, that there is harm to their current position or their future position, and potentially undermining any consultation process that is ongoing. So they're the factors to take into account. Obviously, on the other side of that public interest test is points you've already referred to. Yeah, this is something, of course, it's of broad interest to make sure we get this right, and it affects particular individuals, but also it's about our position as an authority generally. What I would want to pick up on is the suggestion about, I think this was being pushed through, and I think we need to be very careful of conflating pushing something through with dealing with it in private, because we shouldn't be pushing anything through whether we're doing it privately or publicly. We should be giving it proper consideration. So the mere existence of exempt information, the exclusion of the public, does not mean it's pushing things through. It means that it's taking proper account of the public interest and revealing the information concerned, but then still going on to go through a proper process and make a proper decision. So I think that I don't want to sound critical, but I think it's wrong to assume that this would be pushing something through if we choose to exclude the public, or if you as Cabinet choose to exclude the public. So
I'm very grateful for that, Clive. As monitoring officer, that's very helpful. The other aspect to this, of course, is that once we've stopped considering it in exempt mode, that subsequent to that, there should be an opening out of consultation with as many people as possible, and providing as much information as possible before we make any final decisions about anything. Now, that's what I want to achieve this evening with the proposals in front of us. I don't want to close anything down that we might subsequently say we would like to consider, because we need to consult with a wide range of people. And I looking around the room, I suspect that we would all feel that that's the right thing to do. So do you want to comment on what I've just said?
Yes, just want to come back. And that's what I referred to about it's called the Gunning principles. The initial consultation at the very early formative stage has been undertaken, but there's more work to do to refine things, and then there is more detailed consultation to go on. So that's absolutely right to do that, and we would be risking making decision improperly if we didn't engage in further consultation as an authority. It's just making sure we do things in the right order and at the right stage. So it's absolutely legitimate to involve stakeholders further, representative groups, etc., but it's making sure we do that in the right way. So this isn't saying that because you may choose to go into into private session tonight, that nothing goes out further, because that's a very necessary step, and you'll get to a point through your discussion tonight where you know more about where you're heading, and then that shapes the next form of that consultation before that final decision is made.
Now, if any members want to refer to a particular page on the yellow pages, sort of the colour of doors at Granby House or something, which could clearly nothing to do with any exempt matter, if they say they want to refer to the colour of doors at Granby House on page 44, can they do that, or do we have to look at you and say, can we talk about that? Because it appears on the yellow pages.
I mean, it's a decision to go into private session can be made at any point. So if you are discussing broader issues where there's no risk of disclosing exempt information, then that's absolutely fine. If it gets to a point where that broad discussion has to focus into a particular area that might reveal that exempt information, then that's the point when you could say, if that arises, it may now be time to move into private session because, and then make that decision at that point.
Well, I'll tread carefully, and I'll rely on yourself and the chief executive to nudge my elbow if you think we are in danger of wandering into that area, and we need to go into exempt mode. Yes, is that a reasonable course of action?
Yes, that's fine, and obviously, any particular point you want to ask, rather than waiting for us, then obviously for yourself and any other member of cabinet, that's fine.
Thank you for that, Clive. And I'll say to members looking at you, just be careful what you're saying or asking, and if you want to refer to the document, be very clear about what you're going into. All right, and then if the officers feel that has to be in exempt mode, we'd have to go into exempt mode. So I'm just trying to be helpful to everybody, really, because I don't want to. Now, I've got a couple of questions. Sorry, Michelle, please. Kind of you. I was going to say something, but I'll let you speak first, Michelle. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I know this is a really important report for members. I just wanted to cover some of the wider context, and also just to give some assurances as we start this discussion about the transparency and openness of this report. I think that's really important. So this has been written as an open report. The appendix is exempt for the reasons that Clive has outlined, but we intend, as part of our ongoing work, to publish the appendix but redact it to take out the information that cannot be shared in the public domain. So I want to give some assurance around that. But if you're happy for me to just give some context to the background for the review, I thought that might just be helpful as a recap. So just taking a step back, we know that we have an ageing population in the borough. That's not unique to Melton. We know that's the case across the country, and we know that that is projected to grow steadily, and that we need to take a long-term strategic view of that. This isn't something that has arisen in the last few months. This is something that's set out in our HRA business plan as something that we knew that we needed to do. And as part of that, as you said earlier, we needed to look at the options for our own sheltered housing schemes and extra care schemes. I also want to be clear that we know what an important role these schemes play in supporting people to live independently and to live and age well in their communities. And a lot of this is about supporting people to live and age well at home and to reduce the need for people to go into hospital or to access social care. In order to carry out this review and to bring some objectivity and independence to it, that is the reason that we brought the Housing Learning and Improvement Network in. They do an awful lot of work across the country on these sorts of schemes. We've got a lot of experience and expertise, which, coupled with the engagement work and the experience locally, has been very helpful. At this stage, an initial review has been undertaken looking at the schemes. So what's happening with them now? What's the history of them? What are their needs in terms of the fabric of the buildings, the support that's provided, and what could the options be moving forward? And that review has involved engagement with staff, but also with councillors, with the scrutiny committee, with ward members and with stakeholders, and most importantly, with tenants and their families. Importantly, the review highlights some opportunities, but is not asking you to make firm decisions this evening. The review is asking for your in-principle support to invest in and modernise 2 of our sheltered housing schemes, so Bradgate Flats and Wilton Court, on the basis that they really need to be modernised, and they really do. For anyone that's been in there, they definitely do need to be modernised, not only in terms of their look and feel, but also in terms of the facilities and the technology available within them. We are not yet in a position to commit the budgets for that. That needs to form part of a longer term process. So that forms part of our housing asset management plan review and budget setting process. But our hope tonight is to seek your in principle support for that. In terms of Granby House, the review has showed us that the people that are choosing Granby House as a housing option of choice is not necessarily suited to a traditional sheltered housing scheme, and the review recommends that we explore options for the future in terms of that scheme and how we can best meet the needs of tenants in the borough. And then finally for Gretton Court, which I know is a really, really important facility to this council and to this cabinet and to us as officers as well. And that scheme provides more tailored support for older people with care commissioned by the County Council. I wanted to just really note that we understand and value its significance as the only extra care scheme in the borough, and I know how important it is to take great care about options for that scheme. But we have got a need to look at what the best delivery options could be in the future, always with a focus on high quality housing that is affordable for our older residents in the future. So in terms of the recommendations this evening, they seek your in principle support to invest in those 2 sheltered schemes and your approval to carry on the work and options analysis around Gretton Court and Granby House. And that would be wide ranging. It needs to take a number of things into consideration, and there would be ongoing dialogue and conversation with you as a cabinet, with our tenants, with important stakeholders, and also with the scrutiny committee. And there is no desire to withhold information, and I want to be really, really clear on that. The other thing I thought it was important to bring to the Cabinet's attention is the work that's happened directly with tenants, as the people who live in the homes that we're talking about this evening. So our officers have been working directly with and briefing tenants on the outcome of the first stage of the review, and have made a commitment to continue that dialogue. And exactly what has been shared with our tenants is detailed in the open report this evening as well. And that approach will continue, so as many people know as much as possible as soon as possible. So thank you for allowing me to introduce in that way, but I just wanted to give some reassurance. Thank you.
No, sorry, I forgot you were going to do that. So it's my fault, really. Colleagues, I think that probably the recommendations at 2.1 and 2.2 will not be trouble us too much. Noting a report is not in any way endorsing it or approving it. It's just noting that we've received it. And 2.2 referencing Wilton Court and Bradgate Flats. Can we just discuss that item first, so we can segment this a bit? Any comments on that or questions just on 2.2?
Yeah, I back that on the 2.2 with Bradgate Flats because I'm the ward councillor there, and it does. I totally agree. It does need a revamp, and I'm not quite sure on Wilton Court because I don't go in the place, but I do agree with the two options. 2.2, I do agree with that. Thank you,
Steve. Because we're making a corporate decision, not just because you're ward councillor. Emphasise that we're taking a corporate view. Any other comments about that? That's okay. So we'll move on from there. Now, the 2.3 is about note that further analysis and options appraisal are required to inform future options for Granby House and Gretton Court. My guess is that in terms of desiring further information analysis, there's not going to be any argument about that, I suspect. But any comments on that particular? Not what it's going to contain, but the fact that we need more work doing. Anybody got any comments on that?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I do agree with what the Chairman of Scrutiny said. We do need more work on this one, a lot more work. There's things missing in the report, what should be in it, like figures and things like that.
Do you mean the consultant's report?
Yeah, on this report, what we've had off the consultants.
Off the consultants.
Yeah, I think there's a lot missing in it, to be honest with you.
Right, there's further questions.
Yeah,
okay.
After this meeting, we should go forward and look at it a bit more deeper, honest with you.
Okay. Thanks for that.
Things missing in it.
Thanks for that, Steve. That's helpful. If that's your view, that's fine. So, and that will be a piece of work to do. And then I am going to come back to the hard bit at 2.3. So that's the further work. And then at 2.4, we're noting that tenants and stakeholders will continue to be engaged through the process of developing the business case and investment. Michelle, sorry, you're drinking. Could you unpack that particular one? What shape will that take, do you think? Or indeed, Chris, if that's appropriate for Chris to answer.
So if I can talk firstly about investment in the two sheltered housing schemes that we've talked about. So subject to that being affordable within the context of the wider HRA asset management plan, it's really important that any investment we make into tenants' homes takes their views into consideration about how that looks and feels. So that will be a piece of really detailed engagement work that Kerry will lead for us with the team. So make sure then that as options are progressed in terms of investing and modernising those schemes, Tenant View takes part of that. In terms of the wider business case work, so our intention is to start as we have, to carry on as we've started in terms of engaging directly with tenants, seeking their views, making sure that they fully understand the options and are able to give us their views, their concerns, that we reflect those, and that we properly explain to them the facts around the options that might be available and the decisions that our members might need to take in the future. We would have an open and public communications plan. So as an example, we're currently just finalising some information that will go onto our website so that there is information. We have already shared the detail of the review so that tenants know what the review has found, what we will be doing next and what decisions we are asking Cabinet to take this evening, and we will continue that as we go on. Officers have noted, and I know it really matters to you as portfolio holder, that the scrutiny committee would continue to be involved, subject to them building that into the work plan for the future scrutiny around options that will emerge. And that, of course, also opens up an opportunity for the committee to hear from tenants, their families, and other stakeholders affected by any changes that might come our way. So there'll be arranged that we will have a detailed communications plan that will sit alongside this. Members, of course, have the opportunity to help inform and shape that, and to make sure that we are meeting the requirements. The other thing I would draw members' attention to is that this is something we will do anyway because it is the right thing to do, but we also have a regulatory requirement to operate in a transparent way with our tenants, and we absolutely intend to meet that requirement as we go, so that there aren't uncertainties arising from the work that we're doing. There is no doubt that change or any potential for change in the future is unsettling. It's unsettling for staff. It can be unsettling for tenants, which is why it's really important that we are communicating openly and transparently. So I hope that helps for now. So we ask you to note that, because we didn't want to be silent on that in terms of the recommendations. It's really important, that ongoing communication, and it's really meaningful as well. And you would have full access to the feedback that had come from that process. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I want to go back to 2.3 at start with Granby House. Now, I can't quite remember whose ward that's in. Is that Sharon's ward, or is that?
Councillor Atherton and Sharon.
Yeah,
Butcher.
yeah. So does anybody have any thoughts on Granby House in particular, or questions? So that's another reason to wait till Sharon's back from her trip abroad to get some more thoughts on that. That'd be helpful. Okay, so now I want to focus on Gretton Court, and I want to ask a couple of questions of Chris Flannery, who's joined us. Thank you, Chris. With respect to the service that's provided there, can you tell me what the other 7 district and borough councils broadly do in this area of service to the public? Can you unpack that? Because obviously going forward with LGR, it's a significant thought in all of our minds at the moment. That'd be helpful if you could just do that. Thank you.
So yeah, in terms of that context, particularly with LGR in mind, the other boroughs and districts who operate a housing revenue account and have their own stock, none of them provide extra care housing directly, although they would work with the county council in terms of the strategic facilitation of that kind of facility. It is worth noting that the city council do own and operate their own extra care, but they have a different, statutory function around that. And I think again that probably in the context of LGR is worth considering.
Thank you for that. Can you answer a second question for me, please? Because with extra care, I always get a little bit confused, because that's a sort of social services function loosely, whereas we are the landlord of the building. Can you please describe, for the benefit of the Cabinet and the public looking, what the role of the county council is, what it has been until recently, and what they're saying to us now about the extra care side of things?
So as it stands at the moment, the county council, they do hold the statutory function around extra care, and it is linked to social care. They act as the lead agency responsible for the strategic identification, development and coordination of extra care housing to meet social care needs of older people and those with disabilities. This includes assessing eligible needs as outlined in the Care Act, and promoting independence through housing support, and ensuring partnership working across agencies to deliver services and promote well-being. That doesn't mean that they provide the housing itself, but they're responsible for ensuring that it's there and meets the identified need. They have a strategic plan around extra care housing, which includes targets for providing a certain amount of housing by a certain date.
Just pick up on the assessing the need bit. If they assess somebody in Charnwood as needing extra care, that individual will go into that process presumably, they won't be identified for transfer down to here, I'm assuming. But how do they know, for example, how many vacancies we've got at Gretton Court? Do they know that, or what's the process whereby they say, "Or we've assessed Mrs. Bloggs, where can we put her, so to speak?"
Yeah, so the county council, obviously the applications will come to them. We hold a regular, what we call a panel meeting, where we meet with the county council and the care provider and our own team to look at vacancies, so they're fully aware of the vacancies that we have, and we work with them to identify people that would be suitable for our scheme. But it would, equally the same process would happen in other areas as well.
I'm going to pause my comments and questions now to ask any other members if they want to ask any. Yes, please, Sarah.
I think it was just more of a comment really, because I think if the public are watching obviously this evening and wondering what information we've actually been privy to, I think for myself, I was able to feed into the LIN process as a local ward councillor, both for Gretton and Wilton. I felt that they were taking on board the totality of the need for older persons housing across our borough. So I felt that was, taken account of. That our focus was on, we wanted good quality accommodation for older residents, and that it needed to be an affordable option, and that we were really keen to maintain affordable options within our borough, and that they took that on board in the preparation of their report, and certainly the information that's been fed back to us. I think what was quite clear was that we were all presented information from across the country. So not only the information that relates to our borough in this report, but we also received a lot of feedback about what other boroughs are doing and experiences across the country, which I, particularly as a local councillor, found really useful, because we're not experts on housing. And that I think it's essential that we recognise in particular the first two recommendations, and that we try and support the development at Wilton Court and Bradgate Flats as soon as possible. So I'm totally in support of that one. In relation to Granby House and Gretton Court, I think within the report and some of the recommendations that were made to us during our briefing are interesting for the future, but I completely support that they need further work and development, but I would support that.
Pat, did you want to say anything on this?
Just to say, with the LIN report, it is absolutely thorough, and the information in there. And it started off with talking about percentages of older people, because we do know we've got an increasing population. But actually, in the document, it actually gives true figures, and that I think was helpful. But it's the actual depth and the detail, which I think is absolutely tremendous, and helps me to understand just what's going on. Thank you.
Have you got any comments to make?
Well, just that faced with a very difficult decision, aren't we? But I do think that the recommendations, I quite agree with them, but we do need to delve deeper into Granby House and Gretton Court to make sure that whatever path we take is the right one for residents, for ourselves, and also when we're moving into the LGR phase. Thank you.
Margaret, I want to pick up a little bit more. Sorry, Steve, do you want to say anything else? No, you're okay. I want to pick up some specifics with respect to Gretton Court, if I may. Now, the LIN report emphasises the growth in the numbers of people requiring the sort of care that's provided, both at Gretton Court and at Bradgate, for example. So the range of care and assisted housing, which we understand. So that's growing. Now, the building of Gretton Court, which is quite old, we've still got the maisonettes, haven't we? Which used to be for wardens. So when it was set up originally, there was definitely wardens there for 24 hours, which is a sort of assisted care, isn't it, really, in a way, whatever the building was called at the beginning. And we've still got 8 specialist bathrooms, although we've added bathrooms to the flats themselves. So we've got potential. Now, my reading of the document is that we've got 44 flats at the moment. So there's a potential there to add more units. Am I understanding that correctly? Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, there is capacity within the building to provide additional units.
I want to dovetail that into something that's said in the report about it not being, I'm looking at Clive as I'm saying this, be careful. The demand isn't there because of the voids that exist. But we're also saying that there's growth in demand generally across the whole borough. So why is it that we've got voids? Can you explain why there are voids at Gretton Court now in general terms?
So I mentioned the panel meeting. So in terms of finding suitable people for Gretton Court, that's the job of that panel. Although there is a growing demand, what we're finding is that people aren't applying necessarily to live at Gretton Court in particular. So although there's a growing need for extra care in this area, we've got limited applications for Gretton Court itself. And one of the consequences of that, and you'll see that in the report as well, is that the people that do end up moving into Gretton Court have a lower level of care than the County Council currently have targets for. So that means that a lot of the people that live there, or a substantial number of the people that live there at the moment, have quite a low level of care needed.
I don't quite understand why that affects the choices that people would make to go there or not.
I think all I'm pointing out is that because there's a limited number of people that are applying to move there, we're having to make choices to in terms of the panel, we're approving applications from people with a fairly low level of care needed.
Please, Michelle.
Thank you. So just to build on that, so I think what that does is then cause potential difficulties, and it wouldn't be appropriate to go into them here. Potential difficulties in terms of the care contract and the finances around that care contract. I think the other challenge that we have is that if you compare Gretton Court to some of the new build and newer extra care schemes, it's a very different facility, and that's one of the bits of feedback that we have seen that has affected demand in some parts. But this meeting this evening is not about forming conclusions about an outcome of that review. There is an awful lot more work that's needed. What we've tried to do is just highlight to the Cabinet and to tenants, and through the work so far, some of that feedback and the emerging considerations that we need to have. We know how special that facility is, and we know it is the only extra care scheme within the borough, but there are some challenges there, and they're the things that we're trying to work through as part of the review. There are other challenges as well relating to the way in which we deliver services at Gretton Court that you will have seen have come through and we've shared with tenants. So some of the other extra care schemes will have more management capacity, operating across a number of different schemes, which supports some of the economies of scale. And we are an anomaly in the sense that we have the on-site catering service in the way that we do as well. So we've got an awful lot more work to do to kind of work through the detail of what different service delivery models could be, but never losing sight of the fact that accommodation for older people that is affordable and high quality is a real priority, and we don't waver from that.
Thank you for that. I don't want to continue this discussion more than we need to tonight, but I think you recognise that there's quite a bit of disquiet from members generally about the difficult choices we're being faced with, because we know that the elderly population is increasing and the need for care is going to increase. And to us as members, elected members, we seem to be sort of almost withdrawing from that role for ourselves and giving it to another agency to do, which may be the right thing to do, but we're reluctant to do that, and that's what we want to really work on and find out what we can do to not do that. I think that's a fair assessment. I'm looking around at colleagues, and I think there are some challenges about the data, some of the data that's in the Lynn report, which is not appropriate to discuss now. But I think we ought to have a bit of a round table with them and challenge them on that data. And I'm looking at Councillor Carter when I say that, because I think you rather agree with me, don't you, Councillor Carter? I think we need to dig a bit deeper. But I mean, going back to the main body of the recommendations, I think it's really good that we could be investing a lot more money in Wilton and Bradgate. I mean, that's a huge step forward. It's a start in a way, and I think for the benefit of the general public who are listening to this one way or another, that no doors are being closed at the moment. We've got our eyes completely set on looking objectively at all the opportunities we might consider. So I'm going to move the recommendations on block. Sorry. Thank you. Sorry, Pat. You were so quiet tonight. I didn't.
Yes. In that complex in Gretton Court and Wilton Court, there's also the Housing 21, and of course it is nothing to do with the council, but they run places all over the country, and I just wondered whether anybody from the council has been to see what's going on in that complex. You know, because it's they're sort of giving the same, but they're not the council.
Chris, well,
yeah, so the development opposite Gretton Court is sheltered housing, so it is different in a way to extra care. So it's similar to our Wilton Court, Granby House and Bradgate flats. It is a much more modern facility and has had a substantial amount of investment in it in recent years, but it does operate slightly differently.
Thanks, Chris. I'm going to take an unusual step here. I'm going to invite the chairman of scrutiny, if he so wishes, to comment on what he's heard so far and to tell me whether or not what he's heard so far answers any of the points that he raised in his report to us. Or you can have 5 minutes to think about it, whichever.
Yeah, advance notice would be appreciated. No, I mean, I think going back to my feedback from scrutiny, you know, I was very strongly arguing the view that this is of such importance and of concern to a wide range, and not just people who currently need those services. I think generally, you engage with many people, certainly many of the people in my ward who, you know, have a particular view around the importance of the services we currently provide. So the key issue for me was the openness and the care that needs to be exercised in looking at all the issues, but in a public domain. And I think listening to the comments from the director earlier, I mean, I think that was very helpful, and I think takes us in that direction, because this is going to be a decision ultimately is going to live with us for a long while. And I don't want it to be taken in a way that people, you know, feel dissatisfied with their opportunity to influence it. So thank you, Chair. I think your discussion has actually taken us well down that road.
Thanks, Mike. And there's just a thought I had, of course, I always have an afterthought. When somebody goes into Gretton Court, they're often coming from another council house property, aren't they? Otherwise, why would they be going in there? And that when they go in there, that releases a house for a younger family coming through. So we've got to look at the whole picture of how this system works. And I'm grateful to members for your patience on this, because I think we've got quite a long way to go yet. But I'm also very grateful for the work that's been done by officers, because it's a hell of a programme to get through with everything else that's going on. And there's so much detail at the moment. Sorry, Steve, did you want to add something? Please do.
I was going to say, Chair, so we're agreeing on 2.1 and 2.2 to go tonight then. 2.3. Further discussion. Are we going to put a date on for discussion, or because we don't want to leave it and leave it?
Proposing everything on block, but you're asking for a date for what?
Cheers, Chair. We don't be leaving this, yeah, to further discussion. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll as soon as possible is the answer.
Yeah,
really.
so we can get it moving.
But we can't
Yeah,
look at the diary just
yeah,
now.
Yeah, that's
But
fine.
it's we can't let the grass grow under our feet because we've got to get on with this. No question of that. And we need to open up the debate so that everyone can be at the table and can ask the difficult questions. All right. So I've moved the proposal on block. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Margaret. All those in favour? Okay, so that's carried. Right, and we've done that without going into secret mode. Now I've got to move the exclusion statement because under item 14 we have got to go into because it's contractual. So I'll read it out. I recommend that the press and public be excluded during the consideration of the following item of business in accordance with Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, access to information exempt information under paragraph 3. I so move. Somebody second me? Thank you. All those in favour? Okay, so we'll just pause while the online service is disconnected. I normally pull the plug out.